first spot in Windsor Canada, but anyway, it was fine. There's nothing they can do. They couldn't. It was unnecessary to strip search me because I've been strip searched probably 3 times today already. So I presume they assumed I had no contraband on me.
So election coming up next fall. What are you going to be doing until that election?
Oh, okay. Well, we'll be doing lots of things. First of all, I may not even get to most cities in Canada until that tour. That tour is from September 10th next year to October 17th, the day before the federal election. We'll be going to 30 Canadian cities. And the idea being is that, people diminish our impact as voters, the cannabis culture. But the cannabis culture is about 3 to 4 million Canadians. And we are potentially the largest voting bloc in Canada. There are not 3 to 4 million Roman Catholics. There are not 3 to 4 million Protestants. There are not even 3 to 4 million conservatives. There just aren't 3 to 4 million of anybody when you consider of a voting bloc, right? So I think we are a marginalized, underrepresented, and underestimated voting bloc, and we can really make a big difference. If in fact, I've heard critics disparage, only 4 or 5% of Canadians think marijuana is the #1 issue. Well, 5% of a riding, if I get 5% of a riding to come and vote for the Liberal Party of Canada, we can influence 50 to 100 ridings. And that's a majority government as far as I'm concerned. So we have it in our power to make sure the Liberals get a majority government in the next election. So I'll be going to universities. I have a university tour planned in January and February, and they're being booked up right now. And we have the election tour next September, October. We're going to Spain and this in September, and we'll be talking to government ministers. I'll be meeting the man in Portugal who's in charge of their decriminalization. And when I go to Ireland, I'll be meeting members of Parliament in both Belfast and Dublin and talking about what's going on there. And then I'm speaking in Prague and Vienna the next month, and so on. And I hope this will continue around the world, so that I'm speaking in Jamaica, South Africa, and Uruguay early next year as well. And then whenever we make those appearances, we're going to be giving the same message, and it's a worldwide message. Nothing good comes of marijuana prohibition. I want to remind every politician everywhere in the world, nothing good comes of, if you don't want young people to smoke marijuana, that's one thing, but to give them a criminal record, to stigmatize them with a criminal record, to put them in jail even for one night, and believe me, there's no grottier place on earth than the Vancouver overnight lockup, and I've seen it many times, and to me that is a very traumatizing thing, and we shouldn't be putting young people in jail anywhere, let alone 3 months I got for passing one joint in Saskatoon. So such grotesque injustices happen in Canada. They don't just happen to me, they happen to all people who might be in the wrong place at the wrong time with the wrong police officer. And so we've got a lot ahead of us because Canadians are cynical about voting generally. Young people particularly don't vote, and it's true that in the past in the cannabis culture our people don't vote. So I've got a job ahead of myself, but if we can get this Liberal majority government in next year, we'll never need to go to the polls to make marijuana legal ever again. And so, that's a promise. I'd like to tell the people of Canada, you won't actually hear from me anymore in 18 months. All those generations of Canadians that can't stand hearing Marc Emery, is he still alive? Did they finally bring, oh my God, he's back and he's going to harass and cajole everybody? Yes, but only until we make marijuana legalized, and then you're free. Then you're free. There's no more of me. Mission accomplished. I can be happy then, and we can all be one just country with legal marijuana, and this issue will never come up again. Because I hear critics say, well, Canadians are interested in far more important things. I said, what? What are you interested in? The economy, the environment, health care? You can't do anything about that by voting. No vote's going to change that. Canadian governance isn't like that. The NDP, the Liberals, and the Conservatives essentially have the same policy with different personalities. On one hand, we have the tyrant Stephen Harper, then we have the likable, amiable, young urbanite in Justin Trudeau, and then we have another Stephen Harper clone authoritarian in Thomas Mulcair. Okay, but essentially their policies are just the nuance of difference, insignificant. Wow. This is the only issue in the next election that can have a profound impact. There are 2 million Canadians who've been arrested for marijuana, and I dare say close to 1 million Canadians have criminal records. We should expunge that immediately. That's part of legalization.
There you go.
Legalization is that everybody who is ever convicted has that record expunged. And for that matter, once we get beyond the legalization part, we're owed an apology. We're owed an apology
There you
from
go.
Canadians for putting up with 45 years of a completely unjust, pernicious intolerance. No other group in Canada has had to endure what we've had to endure. There's no other group, Canadian group, that's had 2 million of their kind arrested over a 45-year period, and hundreds of thousands of people went to jail for a peaceful lifestyle choice like choosing marijuana. That's insane. That's the kind of thing from the dark ages, and it still exists. And we're owed an apology from every politician that ever participated.
There you
in
go.
that, from Pierre Elliott Trudeau right to the present day and Stephen Harper.
There you
And
go.
not only that, I'm also the cowardice of our legislature. In the United States right now, there were 235 congresspeople voted successfully to tell the Justice Department to lay off the medical marijuana states. And we've got dozens of politicians in Congress in the United States proposing legalization bills. In every state legislature throughout the United States, there's a politician trying to get legalization in his state. But in Canada, we see nothing. The legislatures, all of them, are completely silent. There's not a single MLA from any of the legislatures talking about legalization. And in fact, none of the MPs themselves ever talk about it. And they say America's a much more religious society than we are, but Canadian politicians are the most gutless group of people I've ever seen. They don't want to bring up marijuana, they're afraid of it. After 45 years, really, they're still afraid of it? Is this what we've got? We elect mice, not men and women? Is that really the case?
Bring it! Bring it!
And I'll give you an example too. The politicians are whipped by their leaders to a deplorable degree. You know, one of the most admirable members of Parliament is somebody who is from Vancouver East right now, Libby Davies. She's been the member of Parliament there for 17 years. But you know what? Libby Davies can't even tell you now that she supports legalization policy. She can't tell you that she wholeheartedly endorses any measures to legalize marijuana because Thomas Mulcair, her leader, has her whipped into never saying that word because it dovetails into the Liberal Party policy. In other words, Libby Davies has been a member of Parliament for 17 years, and even she doesn't even have the power to say what she really believes. She can't even use the L word. She can't say legalization without getting ostracized by her own party leader. This is a woman who's been in Parliament for 17 years and has been the deputy leader of the NDP, and she can't even tell the truth. What is the good of electing people if they can't even tell what they really believe? And you'll never find a country
Gotta go!
with as many gutless politicians as you will in Canada. Absolute cowards. I mean, it's unfortunate that Pierre Elliott Trudeau and Stephen Harper agree on so many things, and they both consider MPs nobodies. But if you're going to let yourself be cowed and intimidated by this party line, then you are in fact nobodies. And Canadians have been electing a lot of nobodies for a long time. They don't stand for anything. They won't stand up for anything. They won't stand up to their leader over policy. They won't stand up for Canadians, and they won't stand up for principle. You know, and so we're going to have to reclaim our democracy and get at least marijuana legalized next election. And then maybe after that we should go and do what Stephen Harper originally said he would do, attack the democratic deficit. How did we end up with so many cowardly, gutless politicians in this country who stay silent on the key issues of the day? That is a big question, because I'll say this, maybe the United States is messed up in a lot of ways, but there are hundreds of politicians, elected officials at the state level and the federal level who are talking about legalizing marijuana, and you're just not hearing it in Canada, and there's something wrong with that. There's something very wrong with that.
All right.
Justin Trudeau, and she's actually been asked to run for the Liberal Party in Vancouver East. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, she'd make a most wonderful representative of the people. She's very compassionate about the ordinary person. She's very in tune with the sufferings and ailments that afflict ordinary Canadians.
Do you support Justin Trudeau?
Oh, absolutely, 100%. Absolutely. Absolutely no wavering there. You know, I don't have to agree with him on everything. I don't even have to like Justin Trudeau.